Yo, 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 what is going on, COD Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder. And today, I thought it would be interesting to do a little bit of con talk and going over something that I saw posted on the official Discord. This was by Mr. Bossman, who was saying, you know, this game is a problem with home kingdoms. There is only one big alliance in most servers. I believe the only solution is to have multiple dragons. Then there would be multiple strong alliances per server. Also, there should be a democracy in Call of Dragons. We should be able to vote for the king, and then no one in the server can complain. I believe that it would solve a lot of problems. Okay, so this is interesting because there's a couple posts that we're going to talk about from the start of this that some people reacted to, and I want to touch on this idea of, well, what if we did have multiple dragons in a kingdom? Is this something that would really allow for multiple active alliances to either grow in a Season 1 kingdom, or allow for the chance of multiple alliances being kind of regenerated, if you will, through things like migration. So as always, if you enjoy the content, make sure you throw us out, because it helps out a lot. So let's start off with addressing number one, which is, do we think that this is something that would actually be a solution to having multiple dragons? Before I give you my answer, let's go ahead and I want to look into some responses here that some people had to these. So Mr. Bossman says, guys, vote. If this game should have multiple dragons in home kingdoms so that more strong alliances per server, or vote X. You can kind of see this 2-2. Who put X? I wish to argue with you. Reveal yourself. And then we get into the third post here, which was made by Sparrow. He says, I never said it was boring or poop, but I failed to see how having a voting system would fix the inherent problem of the lack of players in a server to make multiple alliances come end of season. So the response here from Sparrow partly is, it's kind of right and then not right. So most of the time when you think about how servers are being populated, first and foremost, we do not really have an accurate gauge at the moment to figure out, at least I would say in a hard way, how many players are getting populated into each new kingdom, and then how has that trend maybe changed from beta kingdoms all the way to present? Or has anything changed from 1 to 100, 200, 101 to 200, 201 to 300? Now, there are ways to do it. Basically, the one way you'd have to do it to kind of figure that out is you'd have to go off player IDs. And this is kind of the thing that I thought of, which is that when you make a player ID, my understanding, the conclusion I've arrived at, is that it depicts how many players are in each kingdom. So if, for example, a new server comes out and I make a character, my player ID might be 1,700,523. Right? And then I can make another character right away, and then maybe it's the same number, but the last three are 657, and then maybe the next one is 999, right? So you're still at 1,753,000, but that's kind of how it works. So basically how you'd have to do it is you'd have to figure out the highest player ID number and the lowest player ID number in that group, and then kind of look at the range. Now, obviously, you would want to also try and look at the cluster of player IDs, because the one thing you also have to account for is what happens if a player makes a new character there, then the player ID could be higher. So there's a couple of ways, you could figure it out. You would just have to spend a little time filtering out the data. So, however, is this something that is going to fix the inherent problem? So the other side of this is that, and this really kind of comes down to the two things that we've talked about before, which is, one, what is the game incentivizing players to do in new kingdoms? And then how are the current alliances there and the current players that have some know-how, that have some kingdom builder experience? What are they doing to help encourage and to improve this playing style of having as many people in the kingdom enjoy where they're at, but also be able to have a great day-to-day playing experience? And that really comes from, one, doing things such as not just killing everyone immediately when you get into a kingdom, two, not kind of flexing yourself and just saying, mine, right? Doing the whole my germs thing, and actually trying to create an environment where you can teach people and educate and inform and have people feel good about the game that they're playing. And this, of course, only goes over a few things. There's a lot more involved in it. But how many kingdoms have some of you played in where you've got into a kingdom in season 1 and you've actually taken time to go and do these things, right? Where you're nurturing the environment instead of, well, because you kind of already have an idea on how things play out, you're not really going to take the time that's needed to kind of help newer players, which, as we know, all new kingdoms, the majority of players that are populated into them are newer players. Now, whether that's a brand new person to the genre or if it's a newer person to this particular kingdom builder, because you just can't really assume that everyone who's playing the game or the majority of people that are getting populated into a new kingdom are veterans or have even a baseline level of experience. And then on top of that, what level of experience do they have? I mean, sure, do they maybe understand that I need to try and level up my account to get to the next tier troops? You know, I need to send troops out to go build a flag. I can go and attack people. Okay, yeah, sure. Maybe at a very foundational level, they may have an okay understanding. But the amount of people that really understand things from a kind of management level or a macro level on how a kingdom operates, on how am I going to be able to keep the most amount of people here and to have the least amount of player drop off, those are things that the everyday member just really won't be privy to, right? Unless they actively try to put themselves in those situations that usually kind of falls more onto management. So again, it is kind of a yes and no to an extent. However, I very much lean more on the fact that, you know, having one strong alliance in a home kingdom very much can create problems along with the way that the players and alliances are in that kingdom and how they act towards other players. And the fact that it would just be nice to know things such as, you know, how many players are actually getting populated into new kingdoms. Okay, let's go to the next one here. So I think that was number 3. Let's look at number 4. So we go to number 4. Royce Solel says, no offense, but if your alliance is doing good and leadership is doing its job, even when you lose season, you should keep players involved in fighting and stuff. Now, I actually tend to agree with this post, or I should say message, in that if your leadership is competent, if your alliance is active, if you're doing kind of all the little things that lead up to a lot of right things, regardless of how your KVK season ends, as long as you were in somewhat of a position to fight, to have fun, and to actually be a contributing force to the KVK, not where you're just getting, and I mean where the opportunity for a balanced and fair matchup was there, regardless if it just didn't go that way for you, or if you just got raffle stomped in the because of something like that, then I actually do very much fall a little bit more in line here. Where again, sometimes it's not always about it. I kind of hate this idea of that. Oh well, if we don't win the KVK, we're losers, and if we're not winning, then why are we here in this alliance? There's a lot more reasons to be in an alliance than solely than the sole determining factor of if you win a KVK by making it to final zone and capturing Dragon or not. I mean, if that's the case, then that kind of sounds like a pretty toxic way to view and to play the game, because you have to also think about, well, what are the after effects of a thought process like that? Well, if you imagine you have a bunch of kingdoms that are getting put into a KVK and only one kingdom and or one alliance in that kingdom will get the dragon at the end, then by definition, the other kingdoms basically all failed, right? And, you know, again, regardless of how you feel about if you're allied with a kingdom or not, and you're ones that can make it to final zones, if some people look at it like that, and some people just feel, hey, well, that's the only way to do it, well, what are they going to do after that? Well, they're probably either going to leave the alliance, or maybe there'll be some internal frustration that'll be caused. That could lead to maybe an alliance's downfall, maybe a kingdom's downfall, maybe a group migrating out. Will they be able to get more people in after those groups migrate out? You know, what happens if their KVK record is publicized and people think like, oh, yeah, well, they haven't won one, why are we still here? I mean, there's really a number of things that can almost be, I don't want to say manipulated, but you can skew things to make it look a lot worse than it actually is or is not. And so I just wanted to point that out, because to me, I think it's really important that there's appropriate and realistic expectations that are set for alliances and kingdoms where, again, kind of back to Roy's point, right? As long as you have a good alliance management structure, you have good social engagement in your group, And you're not overly putting emphasis that the only sole reason in existence for living is to win KVKs. You very much should be able to retain people after a KVK, even if you're not the one to capture Dragon, and or even maybe sometimes make it to Final Zone. As long as you had a potential opportunity to do so, and you notice where your opportunities for improvement are, and you're addressing those, man, I think that's a positive thing. And, running it back, in those kinds of situations, I think can't be a bad thing. Okay. Let's go to the next one here, which is, I think, number 5 that we have now. And so, Bossa says, the dragon is the reason people join the strongest alliance in the server. And, but if there were multiple dragons, all the alliances could gain strength. So, we kind of come full circle back to this one, where in some regards, yes, if you had multiple dragons or you had multiple final objectives, and you could have multiple alliances capture them, yes, that could potentially have an impact on this kind of pyramid effect, right? This idea of it, everything's kind of funneling to one. Whereas, I mean, to be fair, this has kind of been the way that kingdom builders, at least for a decent amount of time, have operated. Now, if you have multiple dragons, you also have to consider that, okay, well, maybe there's going to be a different way that they go about determining who's king or queen. You could always do something like a voting system where maybe you just vote someone into power, right? Or you have like an election period, right? So people can kind of put their names in, right? Maybe they would have to be leaders or officers of an alliance. And then you could have the general public vote on people, right? And that's how you would kind of be an eligible candidate. And then like the registration period would come up. And if you're an officer or a leader in an alliance, you could, put your name in the hat. Now, obviously, there's probably pros and cons to doing something like that. I don't necessarily think the way that it's done right now is bad as far as how someone becomes king or queen. It just kind of is what it is, right? It's been this way for a while in a number of kingdom builders. Now, by having multiple dragons at the same time, yeah, maybe that can look okay. But really, my general view is that just by adding in multiple dragons, I just don't know if that is going to immediately solve the challenge. I think more importantly, really, the thing about having a dragon or a lost temple for Rise of Kingdoms, or by having I'm already forgetting what the thing is called in Infinity Kingdom. But the idea being that if you add in multiple big objectives and you allow for multiple alliances to capture them, you still at the end may have someone who's going to be a king or queen, and how will people feel about that? At the same time, I don't know. I just don't know if that's going to be the end-all solution at that point. Like, we're just going to add in these additional objectives, and then all of a sudden that's going to solve it. I personally think it's really more of a standard that you have to set in the beginning of a season. You have to kind of instill this expectation and this way, these habits, right? This belief, if you will, between the people that are there in the kingdom, where, I mean, an example would even just be doing something like where you rotate, right, your king or queen, where multiple people get an opportunity to have dragon. Or you run something like a King's Alliance, where you have leaders and officers from if there's 2 or more active alliances. Evelyn, turn the light off. Let's be quiet, please. Thank you. And so being able to do something in that might actually be I don't know if I want to say a better approach, but I think a little bit more of a realistic approach based on the current tools that are available to us in the game right now, compared to just adding in multiple dragons. That's my view. Let's go to the last one here, which, let's see here what we have. This one is by Captain Quack Sparrow. There's only one powerful alliance because people quit. I lost and I joined the victors, as did others. If people are so tied to their alliance to where they would rather quit the game than progress, then that's not the game's issue. I mean, this is a hard take. And a hard take, I just mean this person seems very sure of themselves. Now, in the first instance, there's only one powerful alliance because people quit. So first and foremost, this is actually not accurate at all. And the reason why there is typically one alliance is because players like to climb the ladder, right? They like to work their way up, and this doesn't apply to everyone, but for some, especially those people that are spending money, right? It's kind of like money attracts money. In this game, strong players kind of attract strong players. And so part one of this is that you will always have some people that spend money that will try to look to join the highest powered alliance they can because they'll be able to level up faster with other people that are spending money. Generally, some players that even if they don't spend or if they're free to play low spend, they may still try to apply and do the same thing, right? Climb the ladder and kind of work their way up to the strongest alliance they can. At other times, you will have, you also have to think about how are alliances starting off when they go into a new season. Well, how this happened, well, the mindset here is that you're basically trying to recruit as many people as you can. That's really kind of the base idea for every alliance that starts up, right? Everyone kind of wants to be full activity and generally be as strong as they can. And because of that, any of the alliances that kind of get out to an early lead, if you see some strong players, kind of gravitating towards one alliance or another, it can very much generate a snowball effect. And this really has, once again, kind of nothing to do with that people are quitting. However, I will say that on the note of people quitting, if you end up having a situation where there's a lot of wars, maybe you're seeing a lot of player drop off, and you get to a point where you only have enough active players to fill one alliance, then yes, it could very much end up that way. But that's not generally because people quit. It's more of as a season goes on, there's the chance that that can happen if the kingdom isn't being nurtured well enough to sustain activity that would exceed more than just one alliance. And then then the next part here is I lost and I joined the victors as did others. If people are so tied to their alliance to where they would rather quit the game than progress, then that's not the game's issue. So this is something right on kind of the second line. I lost and I joined the victors as did others. Now, this to me very much can be something that I would look at and say, okay, well, you lost. It was kind of what we were talking about a little earlier, right? You lost your KVK or you lost your season 1, and then all of a sudden you think, okay, well, and who knows what the reason was, right? In this case for Sparrow on why he left. If it's just generally, hey, we lost the KVK, it doesn't really matter about the relationships that were built in the alliance that he was in before. If it doesn't matter about the social interaction, if it doesn't matter about was there potential there or not, were they turning things around, were maybe they're going to get more migrants in, were they coming out with new tactics and action plans, were they going to start doing war games to prep everyone? I mean, or was it just a sinking ship at that point, right? Because they lost. I mean, obviously, we don't know. My point in saying all of this is it goes back to what I was saying earlier in that being able to kind of do a debrief after a KVK finishes and looking at what the opportunities are. The thing is, it's so easy for people to kind of jump ship in a sense if you lose a KVK. But part of me feels like if people are so quick to jump ship once you lose a KVK, maybe the alliance wasn't doing the best job. And I don't know anything about this person's previous alliance, and I'm just speaking more universally, is that maybe the alliance itself didn't do a great job at nurturing those relationships, on building those social structures within the alliance, on educating and informing people, on teaching people, and really making them feel welcomed and feel as though, you know what, even if we lost this, we learned so much and we're going to be so much better the next time around that it almost gives people this heightened level of excitement to stay with the alliance and run it back because they can't wait to put all this new knowledge and experience into the next KVK. To me, that I think is a lot more worthwhile and a lot more telling of your alliance's ability to sustain and maintain good activity from KVK to KVK, even if you are not just the, overlord winners of the season. So yeah, again, those are my general thoughts on this one. I'd love to know what you guys think. This is just me. I thought this was a very interesting topic to cover and to touch on because it did cover a few points. And yeah, what do you guys think? Is adding multiple dragons, would that necessarily solve it? Do you think we just need more nurturing in Season 1? Do you think, hey, we just need to not have people kind of going at each other's throats and actually trying to work together? Or no, you know what? This is how, on average, kingdoms play out, and it is what it is, and it's always going to be this way. Let me know what you guys think. That's going to do it for me. As always, until next time, we'll catch you later.